Okay, welcome back, people. The next thing we have a discussion, Demoscene, the art of doing. And we have two speakers here today. We have Tobias Melkor Kopka, who is a social Demoscener already since the early 90s. And then we have Satu Myy Haapakoski, who is also a Demoscener and a museum professional. Welcome.
Thank you very much. So this session is kind of divided into three parts. So the first part, I will give kind of a classical speech to give you some insight into the thinking behind why we came up with this kind of crazy, but actually also pretty reasonable, at least we believe, and we will discuss later, this idea of starting initiatives around Europe or wherever people are interested to submit an application, putting the Demoscene into as the first digital culture on the list of intangible cultural heritage of UNESCO, which is, to get that right in the beginning, is not about building, it's not about big old spaces, it's about living, breathing cultures which are around for a while, but it would be the first time that a digital culture is part of this process, because so far it's only organ building, shepherdry, some regional cultures, it could be bigger cultures, but so far there's no application done that is trying to bring a truly digital culture or digital physical culture, apparently we are here, into this list. And this is like the first part. Second part, I will discuss together with Satu about like the first impressions in the Finnish community, Finnish scene, also what is happening here at the moment. And then we open up for questions from the audience and have also time after to discuss and maybe have a drink at Assembly after. So yeah, that's like the outline here. And so yeah, thank you for inviting us here. So thank you Assembly, thank you also Neo Games, which supported us on running a session at Nordic Game a while ago, which was the first moment when you talked about it, but this is the first time like to discuss into the scene. So yeah, I will spend a bigger time about the thinking behind it, because I don't have to tell you what the Demoscene is. You are here, so you know what the scene is. And then the second, but the thinking behind it, why we are doing it, what's in for the scene, why is it relevant, why is it interesting? And the second part is more timeline status, what do we need, how can you help? And also then discussing your concerns. So who am I? I work professionally in game developer conferences, so program director for game developer conferences like Ludicious in Zurich and also Reboot Develop. Working there on the team. Grew up in the Demoscene since the 90s, so was in a group, first Agnostic Front, and then we co-founded Howjob, which was actually a pretty strong group from German and Finnish Demosceners. Probably many of you know, for example, Markus Passeler, which just flew to Berlin, but so we couldn't meet this time, but like many people, so yeah, I have a long, I don't know, it's a long history between the Finnish scene and the German scene, even in our group. And so what we do at Digital Kultur, we funded at 2003 to have a legal body, because to run like these events, it's a pure Demoscene event, but to run these events, sometimes you want to have like a sponsorship to have better prices or for the technology, etc. So we need a legal body for that. But it's also kind of on public relations of the scene, and that's a part which is discussed as long as we're doing that. So it's always the question, do we want to be more public with the scene or not? We probably come back to that later. But at least to be a point of contact and also helping other demo parties, that not every party needs to run its own association and legal body, so we can like for example, Deadline in Berlin is like we're working with them that they can organize that through our means. And then, of course, Evoke, always weekend before Gamescom. Also roughly 500 Demosceners. Yeah, that's that. So, coming to, I think I should talk at the look at the clock. So, coming to the initiative. It's kind of a mix of a personal story and then the reasoning, so what my story was in the scene, which for all of you is a different one, of course, and that's the first thing, of course. To start right into it, how long will the whole thing take? It can take up to 6 years. It can be happening already, that it's happening on the first stage, let's say on a national stage, quite quickly. But if we want to go the full route, to the end, in a sense, that an international application is happening from different countries, kind of in sync, that might take years to get that into success at UNESCO. But still, so far we have like active groups in Germany and Finland. More to come in Denmark and Poland and France, Hungary and Switzerland. Many more are people interested, but we'll talk about that more later. So, first of all, to get that out of the way, of course, does the Demoscene need an official stamp? This is culture? No. It's not about saying the Demoscene is it doesn't need UNESCO. The Demoscene is a living, breathing thing, and it's fine with itself. It doesn't need a stamp of credibility and nobilization from the outside, but neither does organ building or shepherdry or soccer culture in the industrial area, in Germany, for example, which are on the list, but still it helps them maybe to raise the awareness that it makes sense to support a culture and that it's there. But we could achieve a couple of things with this initiative, and hence I'm here today to tell you about the thinking behind the Art of Coding initiative, the aims and challenges. Also, what can you do to support the campaign in a successful way? So, yeah, that part I had already in free speech. So, from a personal standpoint, there's many reasons why this is maybe an interesting perspective. For me personally, the Demoscene influenced my life heavily. So it led me into my job in running game developer conferences around the world. Just because I was always surrounded by this kind of creative, competitive, but also community-oriented individuals, and which is so how is it today, as of today? So why starting an initiative about the scene? Why is this a cool thing? So to start with, the idea was spun together with my friend Andreas Lange, who's the founder of the Computer Games Museum in Berlin, so Computerspiele Museum in Berlin. It's one of the first museums where game culture has been taken more closer into consideration for preservation, exhibition, but also in active sense to support the retro scene, for example, game scene. So we got to know each other through meetings in the media studies field more than 10 years ago. And first time that we collaborated was actually when we created the exhibition pieces for the Demoscene for this exhibition in Berlin. So there are three exhibits, so one on the whole spectrum of the Demoscene, from what's happening there on the videos. Maybe you've been there and have seen it. One is more on the art of size coding, so the self-limitation. At that time it was focusing on 64K. And one on demo creation for outsiders, alternative platforms, so from game consoles to mobile and embedded systems. Again, that was 10 years ago. So stuff like LFT was getting known for at that time. So we were thinking about the UNESCO list of intangible cultural heritage for a while, and Andreas was wondering if the Demoscene couldn't be a great example of a digital culture, because I was kind of, yeah, okay, you know the scene, you are always there, you have been there, but it didn't come to my mind first. So maybe it would be a good thing to also maybe get more awareness for it also from a preservation standpoint, which is especially his perspective, as his background is more in institutional world of archivists, museums, and cultural institutions. As we have been, so this is about the past, I want to talk more than about now and the future later, but we have, I mean, the Demoscene, the cracker scene, all of that has been happening in a very special moment in time. Really, this change from analog to digital and all of that. So as all of us know, digital culture, we have established great, and also in the scene, we have established great online archives and archivists from within the scene. So that's a clear thing. Of course, we have our big platforms like scene.org, like PUE, like people like Gleb Albert working on preserving the physical material, also the Finnish Museum of Games, etc. So there is initiatives, but it's still that especially early scene things are also still rotting away in basements or in our brains, because and it could, or there are files in arcane file formats which are not easily accessible for everyone. So more support on that side might come handy. The preservation side, I think we will discuss also tomorrow on the Scrolly stage a little more in detail. With then is a session in Finnish as well at 5 p.m. So we'll focus more on this status and where we are right now. And for me personally, it's like three reasons why I thought, okay, this makes sense. First of all, having grown up and being socialized in the scene, it's influenced my life more than I would have ever thought. This is apparently different for everybody who is part or has been part of a scene at some point in time. But for me, it was very influential in a way that it taught me a lot about competition and community. And it can be a strong driving and creative force of having a common topic between people who are constantly thinking about the same thing. How can we break the boundaries? How can we push the limits? How can we compete in a better sense? And to quote just two basic lessons learned in the scene, relations always go first. This, I think, is a good advice generally in life. And community and competition don't exclude each other. For us, it's kind of a natural thing that both go hand in hand. Each competition works like that. I mean, yes, you're looking at the others and you're kind of in competition, but also, of course, you go hand in hand, especially since we're not in the 90s anymore. So there's not that often that people are fighting each other physically. So it's exactly that Demoscene spirit you find also, for example, in game development, which is one of the reasons why I felt immediately at home. So growing up in the scene and then first coming to a first game developer conference was like, wait, I know this is interesting. I knew this style of doing things together like it's done in the scene. Of course, AAA works differently than smaller teams, all of that, sure. Secondly, as I suppose most of you do as well, we at Digitale Kultur or us personally as individuals are showing lots of the works of the Demoscene for many years to outsiders. And be it in more closely related computer cultures like the hacker scene, or like in our case, like the Chaos Computer Club in Cologne for 15 years, there have been Demoscene screenings, or talking about it in university seminars or having a booth at like Games Convention or Gamescom or like something like that, where we or even doing exhibitions with Demoscene exhibits all around like Germany, or having, for example, recently in Switzerland a part. And all of that is kind of the mission of our association, but it's also it's like many things. So it's really the aim to gather sceners who are around. So it's always nice to sit together and spend some time together, but it's also to inform new people about the scene to get them interested, and thus broadening the spectrum of the people who are interested in the scene. Because we know each other already, but there's always people in closely related scenes who actually could know about it and join the scene, and that's happening, of course. And of course, reattaching old people who have been in the scene and don't know, oh, that's still around, that's happening regularly. That's always this special moment. Wait, what? Really? Okay. Oh, and those, I didn't know. And then people come back, and this is something which is always a driver. And last and most importantly, I wanted to take us also maybe to reflect on the scene, because of course no one can say what the scene is or not. That's decided by every scene themselves. Each group is different, that's a clear thing, but for me, it's also maybe to think about the scene, to say where we are standing, what the scene today is like, and I don't have an answer on that. And actually also to go and get to know more sceners around the world, because in the 90s, oftentimes we were too cool to actually talk to other people sometimes and get to know who they, I don't know, talking to neighbors, I'm not sure. So, etc. Like talking to your heroes is also a thing if you're just a cool for it. So now that's interesting. So in the broader sense, if we step back, because I said this could be also an opener for the larger discussion. Let's look around a little bit and look where we are. It's 2019. And we live definitely in interesting times. So in the digital domain, there's more change than ever. And we love to live in that change as sceners. But we may also feel that the change we have grown up with has, there's maybe more challenges to come actually in the future years. Talking about negativity in online spaces, I mean, we have a good experience actually in trolling and also positive community work, but also, of course, this playful style, what's happening on the web. Or having a long history of finding a good way to work together creatively, which we could apply on other domains, or whatever you think of what are the challenges of the future and today. So one thing is for sure, it will not be boring in the upcoming years, and so it's maybe a good idea to take the digital sphere, and that's the thing why we think UNESCO should take that seriously. It's a good idea to take the sphere seriously, the digital sphere seriously, which has brought so much progress to our lives in the last 30 years. And this is one of the first reasons why we thought, hey, maybe it's time to take digital culture seriously as part of our everyday culture. I mean, of course we do that with our phones and all of that, but there's still a lot actually still to be done. And having grown up in the scene, being socialized in the scene, good and bad, we thought, why not using our experience in the scene as an example of a truly digital culture? As we have our challenges, but maybe we have also some answers and smart people around in a culture driven by community and competition, which is, we have our digital identities for a long time, but of course our physical experiences, and be it just at Assembly or at Evoke or Revision, and sitting together. But we are a decentral global culture. So it's self-organized. It's not, there is no association, there's no something above it. It's self-organized, it's driven by us themselves. So there's many local and physical evolving friendships, and for sure we are a culture driven by its inner forces of people wanting to create, share and celebrate the multitude of things which the Demoscene can do. So to be clear with this whole campaign, nothing for us is further away than saying what the Demoscene is, was or will be, as it's a million of things, or maybe 1,000 of things. If one thing is true, it's decentral, and this truly can mean it's anarchistic, self-organizing, it's emergent, in any form it chooses to be. So this is the thing which is important, because when I saw some of the discussions also on PUE, will this mean that subculture is going away, or will this mean that there's an official body which says this is Demoscene work and this isn't? That's not going to happen. I mean, how can you do that with the scene? It's not possible. The scene, you can't, yeah, And this is also why I'm kind of a little bit excited and also stressed in this talk, because I know, again, it's so many opinions, so many perspectives, so many histories. So it's not for me or us to say what the scene is, except it does what the demo scene does, creating demos and having space and time together. And also, if you look at the groups, some groups have been run as strictly hierarchical, top-down organizations. Others are loose conglomerates of people who enjoy to create in ever-changing teams. And others are mostly running parties or are good organizations making booze quickly disappear. And for sure, not everybody has to be active all the time. Many are staying around for the friendship evolved over all these years or haven't been around for a while, but now are enjoying community again, and maybe they might release a demo again, sometimes, somewhere, but who knows. So, as obvious as it may sound, and so hopefully already clear, why do we think the scene is an example of a truly digital culture? Aside of the numerous arts and crafts, what Demosceners can do, of the obvious stuff, from coding, designing, etc., our culture of revolving around a meritocracy, so status in a scene is done by what you do. So it's the art of doing, and actually that was a suggestion by Ronnie from Fabrausch. It's actually not only, of course, the art of coding, but the art of doing, actually getting shit done, doing things together, which is really the thing in the scene, as in many other spaces. So this is something special, and it has many elements other cultures don't. For example, and I want to mention only two, we could have always created games and interactive media, and many of us do for work, but as Demosceners, we chose to focus mostly on linear media. And a little like the music videos many of us loved as kids, even though the universe of digital interaction was at our fingertips all the time, we chose to evolve a very special form of crack throws, intros, demos, which are mostly linear things, even though it's digital, and it was from the beginning digital. It could have been totally different things, but we have this one thing, what it is: linear, procedural, software-generated animations, demos. Let's say demos, however you define it. And we choose to continue to. And not only that, think of another thing, aspect. Each demo has to be released at a party. Ideally, everybody physically on site. And it can be only submitted and released once. Then it's gone for the abundance of other competitions around the demo scene world. It wouldn't need to be like that, but we chose to, it evolved like that. That's how culture works. It is happening for some reasons. We chose how it was done. It evolved over time. And it doesn't need to be like that. Even film festivals, for example, allow an abundance of submissions. You can submit at film festivals and many times. But even though we are digital, we are the most analog in this regard. It's once, and then it's hopefully witnessed by as many of our peers as possible, and then it's gone. At least this one moment. Freely released on the internet to be witnessed by everybody, of course, that's there. But the moment of seeing it physically together with your peers is only once and for all. Let's ignore remote entries for the sake of the argument. So just to have these, and there's so many more things you can probably bring up. So I'm cutting this. Let me look. Yeah, it's maybe like 4 minutes more here. So to be Captain Obvious, this culture spawns a lot of creative output, be it in the scene with more than 100K of entries in PUE, but also, to take only one example, of course, outside in games. We had so many influences, especially here in Finland or the Nordic countries. Just think of the many game studios who were founded or heavily influenced by Demosceners and are still today. Think of the impact in engine development, engines which produce much of our digital virtual realities of today and the future. And there are so many more stories to tell and aspects to mention which comprise the Demoscene special. So other topics, of course, revolving around size coding, the art of the art of self-limitation and working on self-imposed limits, as the hardware wasn't limiting anymore, or at least for PC sceners. A truly transnational identity, which is super important for me. When I was like joining the scene in 91, 92, that was more BBS times. I will never forget this moment, this first moment sitting on the countryside, somewhere in German countryside, and when a first time a Swedish size-up was like on the keys, and I was chatting with someone via Blue Box in Sweden, and it felt like so big, sitting in a small village with 2,000 inhabitants. And so I think most of the sceners agree that we have at least an international or transnational identity. Many are European. We have our local cultures, for sure. The Finnish scene is different than maybe the German scene, but in the end, scenes and parties work also like this, have very clear rules that you understand what's going on everywhere. And the kind of zero bullshit attitude, and so on and so on. So frankly, the one topics I chose here are only my ones. Again, we don't want to define what the Demoscene is and can be. So as I really hope that you will join us and tell your stories and your perspectives, what we should take into that, and also as these applications are happening in all different countries, they are of course different. Let's say Eastern European scenes have a different history because hardware was different accessible, at least till 98 or 90. So there is different stories, of course, so many. To come to the challenge very briefly. To mention one thing, to get to the second part very soon. So the Demoscene has been fine for many decades and has been sometimes growing, sometimes shrinking, sometimes growing again. But my feel is, the more I think how special and challenging and learning-centered the scene is, there could be still way more people join the scene. It doesn't mean hundreds of thousands. I mean, in the end, we had already in the mid-2000s, we had kind of many articles in German television, etc. Museums started doing exhibitions. So in the end, there's not joining hundreds, but it's at least people in different scenes just get to know about it and can join the scene and share amazing projections with us. And of course, there is the risk that we might grow a little bit slower and a little bit older, as all of us are busy developing careers or raising kids or both, or sorting a new life phase in the ever-changing world of today, because it's not easy. So there's always the risk that fewer new people find a way into the scene, as old people might drop out, or people being not interested anymore. So, and another topic is for why are also people sometimes dropping out. It's kind of the elephant in the room when thinking, okay, should we do that? Should we try that? Is this? We definitely, I think, we could have done a better job, especially in the 90s, to be more welcoming to everybody. Of course, we are a cool guys club for most of the time, have been that for a long time. And so it would be nice, it could be a little more welcoming to everybody, not only male early adopters in a digital age who fought their way up into the ranks of the digital domain as coders, creatives, administrators, hackers, you name the number of jobs we do. So as also, today there are so many more digital communities around who are intellectually interesting, like the Indian game dev scene, which has its own challenges, or some of the challenges we have in the scene as well, or the shaded toy community, the open development community, the maker startup or hacker spaces, and so on. It's not a problem, but a little more visibility could maybe help in attracting sceners too. Because just to be clear, I'm not worried at all about the scene. Because already in 1991, when I joined, it was kind of discussions on, at that time, the BBS boards, scene is dead. And you probably know demos from that time that the scene is dead. So that's that's maybe not. But I believe we are missing out maybe on opportunities of pulling more diverse creatives into the scene, which never hear about us or might believe we are still this kind of closed-off male 90s culture club. And that changed. Of course, it's changing slowly. Yeah. And I don't want to claim to saint here. I didn't think of diversity for most of the 90s myself. But times have changed, and I believe we also missed out a lot to name the number of women in the scene specifically. So, it is changing, and that's a great thing, but for most of the time, women were considered they must be someone's girlfriend, and something which doesn't maybe let you immediately feel welcome and saying this place is for me. And they're amazing, and there's interest, and people want to join. So that's, and maybe they join but then go out again. So we could have maybe done a better job on that side, whoever that we is. Again, it's decentral, it's all of us. So coming back to the question of why we should be the first digital culture inscribed into the UNESCO list of intangible world cultural heritage. It's to get practical. I think I made clear what's special about it, and all of you know that as well, and in different ways how your history has been. Being inscribed into the scene, into the list would allow us to share even further what's so special about our truly hybrid culture, about our history and what awesome works Demoscene, demo groups, coders, musicians, graphicians, animators, and many more creatives create, how awesome it can be to join competitions with friends and playful foes, to make sure our culture will to make sure our culture will be even more colorful, crazy, and never drying out source of learning and creativity as it has been in the past 30 years. So what's coming next? In Germany, we have an application in draft almost ready, which means this is kind of a first draft, which we will then put public and then also iterate, of course. So people interested in other countries can use that as a base, for example, to translate, etc. But then, of course, edit in their own sense. But it is kind of so in Germany, let's say it's like a 20-page document to get that first out. And we will submit it to UNESCO in a first version, and then get first feedback before that is done fully. In Finland, Demosceners are also preparing a draft, but we will discuss that in a second. And also tomorrow at 5 p.m. Helsinki time on the Scrolly stage. It's also live streamed. But to give you a rough outline, it works in every country different. Means UNESCO doesn't have synced up their procedures. So in Germany, it's for example that you first need to apply in a region, which is like North Rhine-Westphalia or Bavaria or somewhere else. And then if one region says, okay, yes, this is legit, this has something to do with us, you can go to the national level. In many other countries it isn't like that. But so in Germany we go first through North Rhine-Westphalia, and then, but as Evoke is there, as etc., we can still say, okay, there's Demoscene stuff happening, and then say, okay, but it only makes sense actually on a national level, and actually it makes only sense if it's an international application. So because that's what the scene is, it's not a national thing. And for that, Andreas is mostly like kind of more the administrator, coordinator, who is more on this, can help on the organization on that side. For communication measures, we have like a Discord set up. So I will put a link also on our webpage if you want to join that. And in general, it is like, so if we submit in Germany, let's say this year, then maybe we have an answer in 21. So now is a more active phase. And then there will be also slower phases, but it's in each country different. And for example, in Finland, it might be a different timeline. We talk about that in a second. But the important thing is, in that moment when we succeeded, or have good chances of succeeding in more than one country, we can say this is now a transnational application. Thank you. This is now a transnational application. And then we can say, so if it's in more than one country, then we can say now it's an international application. And this is kind of the process I can help more in detail with, which is like the legislation at UNESCO. This means the problem, so there is one challenge that if we want to get to the international level, each country can only submit a number of cultures to the international UNESCO per year. And then there's one country which has to go to the lead, and to use its one voice. Some countries can submit 2 or 3, and to use its one voice, and then other countries can tag along and say, okay, wait, we are joining as well. We do our applications, but we don't have to use our voice. So this is more procedure on that side. So for Finland, it might be that 2022, for example, it might be the next time frame. So, to close, why bother? First, it's a challenge, and I heard Demosceners like those. Secondly, it may help party organizers to raise funds or sponsorships more easily. Because oftentimes you're talking to people, of course, who don't understand the scene. And it's, yeah, this computer thing, it's procedural, it's real time, it's pretty cool. But if it may help in that moment when you say, hey, we are considered cultural heritage, it's even if you don't understand it, look here, that's a stamp, that might help. So it definitely will make conversations easier with cultural institutions, and in many countries that's only the funding institution. And of course, I didn't make that strong here, but it may help us with preserving and discussing our cultural heritage, not only within the scene, but also via professional heritage institutions and experts in archiving and preserving digital culture for the years to come. As, again, discs are not working anymore, brains might get older, or it's actually, actually we're also losing people. And also it will help institutions maybe help to more easily justify spending money on research, archiving, and preservation of something like the Demoscene cultural history. So, the awareness thing I think already said, and that's it. Because that's what it's all about. The Demoscene is a living, breathing thing, and it's our aim, and also the aim of UNESCO with the program of the intangible cultural heritage and practices, to support culture, as special as it may be, to maintain its identity and history, to stay living and breathing as a vibrant, chaotic, and lovely culture for years to come. So, thank you very much for that. So, Demoscene preservation, you know all this, got papers. So, so please welcome on stage Satu. Also, so we are originally we were planning like to have a bigger group of sceners right after this session, but as tomorrow there's also a bigger session, and we will also tomorrow night have a quick show up. We decided to talk here briefly like on what's going on in Finland, and then I'll come back to that very briefly. So yeah, Satu, how are things in Finland right now?
So what are we doing right now? We are kind of first of all gathering our troops, so just getting the volunteers, everybody involved, and also we are starting to ask people that what do they think about Demoscene, getting the information, because it is not only thing that we need to know from the Demosceners themselves. We also need to know other groups, that how are we perceived from the outside. So we are doing that, so we have a forum for that, and we are trying to give the address in the Scene Lounge, so come to Scene Lounge, and if you don't find it anywhere and you need to know it, just grab me, I will tell you. And then after that, in the autumn, we are doing this application that we would get into the, we don't have this way that you have to first be in certain area and then to get the national status, but we are trying to go to the national thing, and we are doing the application for that in the autumn. So that is in prepare. So first of all, we're going to do the first draft of the application, and then also we're going to ask people that what do they think, that should it be changed or.
And that's of course a super important thing. I mean, we wanted, so in Germany it's only every 2 years that you can submit this application. So that's why we wanted to start right away, and then now are starting to talk left and right and see that we can involve as many people as possible quickly. But it is, you have to start somewhere and then see where we're going. So you're submitting like an inquiry so people can do their opinions and perspectives, like.
Well, we have few questions, and basically they're very open-ended. It's like, how do you see Demoscene? Because as a Demosceners and a Demoscene, it's not very uniform group. There is a lot of opinions, and they differ quite a lot. And just if you think about the question, who is a Demoscener? It's one of those things that you would, if you ask from other different people, you will get different answers. So, and that's why we are trying to ask people that how do they perceive the Demoscene, and I'm really interested of seeing the variety of the answers and how can we actually pull something together from that.
And I think the same, so I'm not yet sure if we can keep our timeline, because it's really important. It's really important to have also, of course, seen internally that conversation now in the next months, actually, and potentially also years, because it's really, we are just starting right now, and then if for over the next years we will need so much support to also keep going with this, because you know how it is. Initiatives in the scene can go up and down. We all like to produce to a deadline, and this will take a little more time. And so we need definitely like people who are interested to give their feedback, also criticism. So we had a couple of critical questions as well at Nordic Games. So how has the feedback so far been here in the scene?
At least the people that I've talked with, they're really interested and they think that this is important. And one thing that you told about the points that why is it important, but one big, huge point, at least in my point of view also, is that we need, if we get the status, we would get national museums. It would be a pressure for them also, not just to preserve, but to document and do a research on us. And this is something that we have a lot of information, at least how the digital cultures has evolved. And I think this information, even though we are kind of preserving it ourselves, it's kind of getting lost. And we need to kind of document it now.
To sit down, actually, like stuff like Lab Albert is doing, like Dipswitch, for example, but actually, to sit down and actually interview even people, but of course that needs also ideally research. So what are we looking for? So again, discussion on what you think about this, so we can have that right now. And also there's, after the session, there's, I think downstairs, a seating area where we can continue also the conversation. We're especially looking also for demo groups who think, that's interesting. So we think this is cool, this is interesting. So Razor 1911, for example, already mentioned, yes, that's cool. HowJob will of course support like 5711, etc. So it's more, it helps, of course, to say, okay, the scene is also interested in this because, it is our history and culture. And supporting companies, that's mostly, you know, what's done for the scene can't be for money, that's clear. But at least helping for travel funds, etc. If we go to a place, then to help that it's not off our own pockets all the time. So this is like something. And then, yeah, people helping to spread the word, helping with communications, all of that. So, thank you very much for for that part, and I think we're now off stream. Thank you very much again.
Thank you.
And the parking lot displays was entry number 9 here in the Tobias Compo. See now, Jet Assembly. Bullet time is entry number 10. More Amiga and 4 channel mods.